Dan Gookin is a father who lives in Coeur d'Alene, and I'm a member of the City Council. I'm also an author. My famous book is, DOS for Dummies, which started the whole dummies phenomenon. I've written a lot of dummies books. I also do online training. I've been on the City Council for 14 years, and I'm just kind of about town. Why run for mayor? So it's something that people have asked me about for years. People have said, you need to run for mayor. And actually, I'd have been in office 2 years, and they said I should run for mayor. And every single mayor election, I've had someone come up to me and say, you need to run for mayor, you need to run for mayor. So I figure it's about time. I've been in there long enough. And I also think currently where the city is, it needs better leadership. And it needs people to have a vision and to say, here's what we want to do, and here's where we step out and do it. And these are the things that need to be done. And we've been missing that in City Hall for a while, and I want to bring that back. Well, I don't want to be one of those mayors who comes there because I want to do a showcase project. I'm not going to be there because I say that, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to buy this. We're going to build this. We're going to do this. The first part of the term is just fixing things, is fixing communications and streamlining some processes. I would really like to be supportive of our small businesses, and a common complaint I get is that it's very difficult to work with the city. We need to streamline some of the permitting processes. We need to work on stuff that the city does, services for the public, and make them better. The city's made great strides in things like public safety, and we have a hell of a library, and we have awesome public parks, but there's some things that do need fixing. A lot of it ties into growth. A lot of it ties into small businesses, like I said. Those all need to be done. Internally, communications needs to be improved between council and staff. City council needs to be more involved. These are all kind of behind the scenes things that I think really need a lot of attention. So it's not like a showcase. It's not like we're going to put something up and put a plaque on it and say, look what we did. I do think that one of the successful things I'd like to see is I'd like to see downtown more successful. I'd like to see more activities down there, more reasons for people to come into downtown, and also just to make sure that Coeur d'Alene continues to be the wonderful place that it is. So not really coming in there saying, oh, we're going to do this, this, and this, and build this grand project. I would much rather say, let's go ahead and stay on course, do good things for the people, and fix a lot of the small issues that are really making City Hall a stumbling block for some people. And there may be some things I don't really know, because a lot of that is reactive. So Mayor Widmeyer came into office. He didn't really say, well, I'm going to be doing this, this, and this. But he did build the K-27 memorial. I mean, which wasn't done by the city. It was done with the city, but the funds were raised privately. No one anticipated that Greg Moore was going to be shot. But that was something that we had to deal with at the same time. So I would prefer to be that type of mayor, who I'm going to go ahead and keep things going. We did do the Atlas Mill site under Mayor Widmeyer, but that was more of a collaborative thing. I remember the meeting where that happened, and that we were sitting there discussing what's going to go on, and I just piped up and said, well, why don't we just buy it? And I remember Kiki Miller said, are you serious? And I was like, well, yeah. I mean, why don't we just do something with it? The city, that we look for developers to do things. Why don't the city do something? And we did. And so there's a lot of that is collaborative. There's been talk about doing an event center downtown, like a theater. And I like that idea. That's not something the city could do by itself, though, but it's something that we could go ahead and facilitate for. I would not do that as like, here's what I really want to do, is let's do this thing downtown. But I've talked about that ever since my ex-wife and I used to run the Lake City Playhouse, 30 years ago. That was kind of what we said. Well, we moved the theater downtown. That'd be great for downtown. It would be. But is that something that I'm saying, well, I'm definitely going to check that box off at the end of my term? No, it's something that we can work toward. There's other things that can be done around the city to make the city more livable and more enjoyable. But right now, I'm not really saying, well, I'm going into office to do that. No, it's like, let's restore the leadership. Let's get some things under control. Let's be more responsive to the public. Work on that first. Then we can talk about some of the other stuff. I'm not running against Woody. I'm running for the seat. So when Woody first wanted the job, and remember, Mayor Hammond resigned, and so we looked for people who wanted to be the mayor. Christy Wood and I did, because we wanted to say, who can we have that will steer the ship while Jim has left and carry us into the next election. And honestly, no one wanted the job and no one was available for the job. So we had to pick among council. That was what we were left with. And we settled on Woody, and I phoned up Woody and I said, so Wood, I'd be happy to support you because you've been here a while, you know the system, you're a very likable guy. I mean, everyone gets along with Woody. But I want to make sure that you're just going to do this for the short term, and that you're going to make sure you have an open and honest process to replace your vacant council seat. And then also Dan English wants to be the council president. Are you okay with that? And he said yes to all those things. Turns out 2 of those things weren't really yeses, that he did want to run for re-election and that the process to appoint his replacement was not going to be open. And that really upset me. So as far as I'm concerned, let's go ahead and take that on. And also, as a caretaker, Woody's fine. But as far as being responsible and doing the things that need to be done, we need more leadership. We need someone who's going to take charge. And when I come to him and say, I have an issue with this, and you are the mayor and you need to deal with it, it needs to get done. And that'll get done when I'm the mayor. We'll make sure that the council priorities are respected and that you don't have councilmen such as myself sitting there on a council meeting and saying, I asked for this 6 months ago, where is it? I mean, that needs to be taken care of. And that's not because I want something done, that's because the public wants it done. They're coming to me saying, get something done, and nothing is happening. So we need someone who's going to say, let's make that happen. Well, the mayor's job, a lot of people don't understand this. So they think the mayor runs the city. Well, council runs the city. They run the city through setting policy. At the city of Coeur d'Alene, there is no policy manual. So when it comes to policy, when you have an issue that needs to be dealt with by staff, normally they would look in the council policy manual and say, what does council say we do with this? That doesn't exist. So they go to the mayor, and the mayor makes a snap decision, which is not the way government's supposed to work. When that happens, when I'm mayor, I will say, we need to set a policy. Council sets the policy, not the mayor, not city staff. And that needs to be fixed. This is an internal problem. A lot of people don't understand this because they look at and they see everything works, but that's not the way it's supposed to work. You're not supposed to have staff making a policy decision and then running it by council for a rubber stamp. That's not the way government's supposed to work. For example, we had a guy at the last council meeting who wanted to do a presentation. He comes up and he wants to make public comment and he says, I want to show you this video. Can I do this? Well, the reason that went south is because there's no policy about that. And he even wrote us a letter afterwards and said, I don't think it's fair that some people get to do that and other people don't. Well, why is that? Because there's no policy. So when you see something like that happen, it's because there's no policy. So the first thing you would need to do is say, we need to set a policy about who gets to use that and how. And that's how you fix problems like that. So whenever you see some little disconnect like that, it's because there's no policy. There's nothing about term limits. The test case on that was California. And the Californians said we need term limits because they were sick of all the legislators being in there forever. Willie Brown was one. I mean, he was in the legislature for forever. And so they enacted term limits and nothing changed. So term limits they change the bodies, but they don't change the methods. And you have to judge each council person, each elected official individually. Some are really good. Some people really like council people and they want to keep them reelected because they're doing a good job. And some people don't. And so, but they can't kick them out of office. So they talk about term limits and say, this is the way we're going to fix the problem. So I mentioned that about term limits, but I got a lot of feedback saying, no, don't do that. You can't do that. You have to keep doing this. Every time I bring it up and I'll say, because I do a lot, I'll say, well, I think this is my last time. Oh, no, don't. You get that feedback. It makes it very difficult to make that decision. So what do you say about term limits? Should people be term limited? Well, there's always a term limit every election when you can go ahead and get rid of someone who's not doing the job. But eventually, you do get tired of it. I know that because there has been a few legislators who I've absolutely adored who I thought, oh, no, you need to keep doing this. And they're like, I'm just tired. I can't do it anymore. And so you got to respect that. Battery's getting low. So you never can really predict the future and say what's what. But the battery is getting low, and it does, it's like any other job. If you're really into your job, you love your job. I love what I do personally. I think it's great. I could do it forever. But eventually, sometimes the grind just gets to you and you're like, okay, this has been enough. And I don't know if I'm there yet. We'll find out. Our budget is bigger because we have our own fire department. Now, Post Falls doesn't have, well, we have our own fire department, we have a library. Post Falls doesn't have their own fire department, they don't have their own library. So in Post Falls, you're getting separate property tax bills for Kootenai County Fire and Rescue and for the Community Library Network. So you'd have to, if you wanted to compare apples to apples, you'd have to say, okay, so what is their total property tax burden compared to the city of Coeur d'Alene? So that's one of the reasons we have our own fire department, and that adds that extra amount that you see on the property tax bill. There's been several things that I've tried to do over the years to fix the property tax increases. Number one, we need to understand that property tax increases are related more to your assessment than what the city does. And the problem is, if you have an assessment and it says your house is worth $500,000 one year, and then the assessor says that your house is worth $700,000 the next year, your property taxes are going up. That has nothing to do with any of the taxing entities. That has to do with the assessment of the house. And this is the biggest problem, is that over the past decade or so, or even longer, property values in Coeur d'Alene and in Kootenai County have gone up catastrophically. I mean, my house that used to be valued at, $500,000 is now over $1 million. And I haven't noticed any difference, but apparently the assessor thinks that it's worth a lot more. What can I do about that? You can protest the assessment, which I did one year when it went up 40%, and I lost, but that's really all we can do. Now, does that affect my property taxes? Absolutely. Amazingly enough, in that one year when my assessment went way up, that was the year the city took a 0% property tax increase. So the assessment is going to impact your property taxes more than what the city does. But still, I have fought consistently to lower the property taxes, or lower the budget, by cutting certain things that I didn't think were necessary. One year I was successful because the streets department wanted to buy all this big expensive equipment to do the asphalt overlay, and the mayor coordinated with me and with other council people to go ahead and kill that. We were able to eliminate the property tax increase that year, which was amazing. And I actually have a video on my site about that, about the vote and everything. So every year I try to find things to cut. Now, I'm a single council person, and my vote only counts once in the budget process, and that's on the day we adopt the budget. So all the work has already been done. As mayor, I can position myself better to deal with the budget and to be more active in the process. And that's another thing that I'd like to fix, is I think we need a more active budgeting process. Next week, at the end of May, we're having a council priorities meeting. And I had to beg Woody to get that done. I had to say, we need a budget priority meeting. We used to have them every year. We would have a couple of budget priority meetings, one way before they started the process, to say, what does council want to spend money on? What's our situation going forward? And then that just stopped. And that stopped because the mayors didn't want to have one. I want to have one because I want to hear what the council wants to say about the budgeting process. And then I want to have another one as the budgeting gets underway to find out, where are we? What is the projections? What is the ask? What are the burdens that are coming up, that we know are coming up, that we have to pay for? And how can we manage them? We, the city council right now, is completely cut out of that process. The mayor is involved, but the council isn't, and that needs to be fixed. So I'm going to fix that. But as the mayor, there's other things that I can implement. A few years ago, as city councilman, I tried to get what I call an employee reimbursement program, which is where if the employee finds something that costs less, then let's reward the employee for finding that and saving the city money. And that idea didn't come from me. It came from a city employee who sat with me on my front porch and said, Dan, I got to tell you, there's a lot of money that goes wasted, because the employee will say, well, it's in the budget. Well, I could still use this, but we have money in the budget for a new one, so we'll just buy a new one. And what is the motivation for that employee not to do that? Well, personally, I would go ahead and keep using what it is I have, rather than saying, well, I got money in the bank, I can buy a new one. We need to instill that in them with a reward system, and we can do that, and it's been done elsewhere, and it's been done quite successfully, because the way you save money is with a lot of those nickels and dimes, and that's how we can do it. But when I presented that to staff, I was shot down. I was actually told by a staffer who's still there, who said, well, they're paid enough money anyway. We don't need to give them any incentives. And that's not fair. It's not fair to the employees. It's not fair to the taxpayer. So I think there's lots of good ways we can look at the budget to fix items going forward so that that property tax burden on our behalf doesn't get as egregious as it could be. But again, the reason your property taxes go way up some year is your assessment. It really has nothing to do with the taxing entities. I can't predict what they can. I will meet with the associations and the union. I already met with the union, actually. The fire union wanted to get their interviews done way back in January, I think it was. It was way early. And I asked them why they were doing it so early. I said, this is way too early. I mean, you can find out who's interested in it now, but you don't really know until the whole field is there. And once the field is present, then you should do your interviews and find out who it is you're willing to throw your weight behind, if anyone, because not every one of the associations will go ahead and endorse in an election. So yeah, I would hope to get the support of the employees. That would be a real good thing. I know I've asked the fire, but I've not asked the other two because it's still early. Well, we do need to streamline a lot of stuff for small businesses. I also like to think that when I'm up there, I kind of speak for people who don't really feel they have a voice. You know, you get 50 people who show up to a city council meeting, and they all are ticked off at something. They don't want you to do something. And I hear that. And it's very frustrating for me when the rest of council doesn't. And the rest of council just basically shuffles off whatever it is we're concerned about and then votes the other way. And so I'd always like to think that I'm going to be the voice for the people and let them know what's happening. Let them know they're being heard and hopefully get a solution that'll make them happy. So that's one thing I would like to see. And that's one thing a lot of people say about me is like, oh, you make the common sense. You make sense up there. I appreciate what it is you have to say. Thank you for bringing that to the table. You know, I thought that before I was elected, and I would watch and I would say, why doesn't anyone ask this question? And then I will ask that question now. And so people do appreciate that. It's going to be different from the center chair because I don't get a vote, but I still have a voice. And if I'm inside, my goal is to make sure that whatever the council wants, what the people want, is something that the city's going to do. I don't like the Hutter bypass. I don't think it'll work. I mean, here's the thing. And people don't understand this, is the Hutter bypass is going to be a freeway. It's going to be 4 lanes. It's going to be dug down like 50 feet in. And that's heavy duty. But the problem is the Hutter bypass is bypassing I-95. So theoretically, what you do is you come up 95, you go past the hospital, you get on I-90, and you go a couple miles west, and then you get on the Hutter bypass. And I don't think anyone's going to do that. I mean, maybe if, Apple Maps is directing you to do that, you would do that. But it doesn't seem like anyone will do that. Now, maybe if you're coming eastbound from Spokane and you want to go to Canada, you can do that to avoid the city traffic. That would be one way to do it. But otherwise, when I sit on the KMPO, which is the Regional Transportation Board, and I'm like, can't we just do basically a highway instead of a freeway? And instead of doing, 2 lanes, we could go to 3 lanes, we could do whatever, make it a little bigger, a little more accommodating if that's what we want. But the original plan that was to make this huge highway, it was just like, that seems like a lot of overkill. And there's other traffic and congestion priorities throughout the city and throughout the county that I think we should do first. Ameliorate some of the traffic congestion like on Saltese. Just having another exit onto I-90 would be nice. So, and I know some of those plans are out there. They're going to be widening I-90, which is nice. But yeah, that's just, to me, I don't know where that came from or why that was considered important. It just seemed really odd. And of course, all the neighbors were angry, which meant I was going to represent the neighbors. And I'm going to say, well, this doesn't make a lot of sense. So we'll see what happens with that. Here's the disappointment. Urban renewal could have been used to bring in jobs. Imagine if we had some big companies here that provided some career level jobs. Would housing affordability be an issue if you knew that there was a big plant here where they manufactured something and you could go get a decent job that's going to pay you enough wages that you're going to be able to buy a house? Urban renewal could have done that. Instead, urban renewal in Coeur d'Alene has planted houses for multimillionaires who don't live here. So you look at Atlas Mill Site, for example, which is the latest urban renewal district, and it says, We have wonderful homes here starting in the low 990,000s, and they can go all the way up to 2 million. And that's crazy. The people who live here cannot afford that. Why are we using government to build high-end homes for millionaires? That's crony capitalism. That doesn't make any sense to me. I wish they would stop doing that. A friend of mine calls it the Atlas Millionaire site, not the Atlas Mill site. And it just seems like it's unnecessary. It seems like that would happen without the government help. And the result of that is that we have high-end homes here. We've attracted a lot of the wealthy who come here, who buy these homes, and they really don't contribute much. They're not, I mean, they go to the restaurants, but they don't work in the restaurants. So I think urban renewal has created a lot of gentrification, and this was the goal of council 30 years ago when they created the urban renewal district was, hey, let's get the part-time rich people to come here and pay property taxes year-round and not live here, so not use the services. And I'm like, yeah, but what does that do for the people who live here? It doesn't really do much. So they've been very successful at that. They're still doing it now. There's a pit in the Atlas Mill site that they've put millions of dollars into that they will never get a dime out of. Councilman Dan English has said on council several times that we need to shut down the hospital district. I did not vote in favor of the hospital district because I didn't think it would ever be able to fund itself, and it hasn't. So should we shut it down? Yeah, I think so. We should shut them all down and take all that money that's going to urban renewal and put it back into the city. I would love to see that. A lot of the money that urban renewal has raised, they just gave away. So, and then where was the master plan? I mean, if you look at the original master plan, a lot of the stuff they did was not in the original master plan. And then what was in the master plan was the McEwen project, and they had to borrow money to do it. So what good was the master plan? Anyway, so I've been a critic of urban renewal for a long time. I can promise that as mayor, there will be no more new urban renewal districts. We will not create any. In fact, I've said one of the things that we could do to stimulate economic growth is get out of the way. So you want to open a restaurant in town, you're going to pay a lot of city fees up front before you even serve your first dinner. Why don't we take those fees and amortize them over a period of time to make it easier for you to open the restaurant? You still have to pay the fees, but there's incentives we can provide without having to use urban renewal or without having to create a huge burden on the small business. And I think that would be a better approach to economic development than to use what has been used, urban renewal here in Coeur d'Alene, to basically build condo towers and high-end development that none of us can afford. Because I bought the Atlas Mill site so we could build a park. And what I wanted was a park. I wanted to make the whole thing a park. And of course, we couldn't afford that. I mean, that was whatever it was, 80 acres, or I forget how huge it is. And that would be, even as a passive park, that's going to be a lot of work. But the waterfront was important. And we could develop the waterfront. And the goal was to have the waterfront be developed and have the development behind it pay for it. At the time, it was not decided by council that that would be high-end development, that it would be, we knew that it would be, the homes along the river would be expensive because you have a river view. But the rest of it, there was a discussion on council about what if we could make this affordable housing? What if this is workforce housing? We talked about that a lot. But at the meeting where we approved the plan, I pointed out to council that there was nothing in the plan about that. There was the park, but the rest of it was basically up to urban renewal to do whatever it wanted to do. And I'm like, you guys, you're giving the car keys away and you're not telling them what the rules are and where to drive and how much to drive and how to return the car. So I voted against it based on that. And then once it got rolling, they did whatever they did. They had an original plan. It changed, it changed, it changed. We would bring up occasionally that, you know, what about more affordable housing, workforce housing, housing for people who actually live here? But that all fell on deaf ears because they went and built whatever that is they built anyway. So that's another issue I have with urban renewal, is that once you spin it off, city council basically has no control over it. And that was kind of sad. So I'm happy for the park. I loved having the park there. It's a great park, and a lot of people don't know about it yet. It's kind of a secret thing. Marvelous park. I've ridden my bike up and down that path a lot. It's fun. But the rest of it is a bunch of high-end homes. So, and no one here who's living here like my son, if my son still lived here, they would not be able to afford a house in Atlas Mill. I don't do favorites. So my kids will say, "What's your favorite Star Wars movie?" And I'm like, Star Wars. Like, yeah, which one? Oh, Star Wars. It's like I just don't do favorites. So restaurants I like. If you do restaurants I like by where we go a lot, Shiki is great. I mean, because it's right there. And I don't know if you walk into town to eat, because that's what we do. Love Shiki. I love Crafted. My son works at Tito's, so we love Tito's. I love going to Angelo's. We went to 10-6 this morning for breakfast. Have you been to 10-6 yet? Oh, wow, you got to go. Great atmosphere, great food. There's so many good food, good restaurants here in town. I probably could not name them all because I love so many of them. But if you looked at my credit card bill, we like Shiki's sushi a lot. And so that would be one place that we go. I love, let's see, it's Relic way out there on Sherman, and they do barbecue. Love going there. Their hours are weird though, so sometimes we show up and they're closed. So, but there's a lot of good places that I love going in town, and that's one thing we could do. You know that there's a culinary program at NIC that produces top quality chefs. It'd be nice if this town had some really just top flight restaurants. I mean, wouldn't that be cool if there was a place you could go that was just like some place that you've been to in Europe or in Vegas or someplace where they just do really nice stuff? That would be really cool.